The morning sun gently illuminated the kitchen of the house at 247 Whisper Lane, where the Davis family was preparing for another day. 18-year-old Naomi sat at the table, flipping through the pages of her school yearbook and occasionally glancing up at her stepmother, Rachel, who was bustling about the stove, preparing breakfast. "I can't believe it's graduation in 3 days," Naomi said, putting the yearbook aside. Her voice sounded slightly excited, mixed with anticipation. "It seems like just yesterday I was a first grader." Rachel turned away from the stove, a tight smile on her face. "Time flies, dear. Your father is so proud of you." She placed a plate of eggs and bacon in front of her. "By the way, have you decided what you're going to wear?" Naomi shook her head. "I'm still deciding between blue and burgundy. Dad said it's up to me." She picked up her fork and began to eat, watching Rachel out of the corner of her eye. Something about her stepmother's behavior had seemed strange to her over the past few days. Too busy, too tense. David Davis came down the stairs, buttoning his shirt with the Davis Auto Service logo. At 42, he still looked like a strong man with hands tanned from work and kind eyes. The loss of his first wife 5 years ago had left its mark on his face, but marrying Rachel 2 years ago had restored some of his former cheerfulness. "Good morning, Princess." He kissed Naomi on the top of her head. "Ready for your big day?" "Dad, it's still 3 days until graduation," Naomi laughed. "But you have rehearsal today," David reminded her, pouring himself some coffee. "And then we have to pick up your corsage from the florist." Rachel walked over to her husband and quickly kissed him on the cheek. "I'll pick up the corsage after work. I have appointments at the clinic until 6 today." Her hand lingered briefly on David's shoulder, but Naomi noticed how quickly she removed it. "See you tonight," David said, picking up his coffee mug and heading for the door. "Naomi, don't be late for rehearsal." After her father left, the kitchen was plunged into a strange silence. Rachel began washing the dishes with unnatural zeal, while Naomi watched her, trying to figure out what exactly was bothering her about her stepmother's behavior. "Rachel," the girl began cautiously, "is everything okay? You seem tense lately." Her stepmother turned abruptly, her eyes flashing with alarm for a moment, before she forced a smile again. "Everything's fine, dear. Just a lot of work at the clinic. Dr. Miller is on vacation and I've had to pick up the extra load." Naomi nodded, but something inside her told her that it wasn't just work. In the 2 years they had lived together, she had learned to read Rachel's moods, and right now, the woman was clearly hiding something. Later that morning, Naomi met her best friend, Jenny Wilson, near the school. Jenny was Naomi's complete opposite, loud, impulsive, but incredibly loyal. "Can you believe that in 3 days we won't be Brighton High students anymore?" Jenny exclaimed, waving her arms. "I'm so excited I won't be able to sleep until graduation." "And I can't stop thinking about what's next," Naomi admitted. "College, a new life." Sometimes it feels like everything is changing too fast. They walked through the main entrance of the school, where other graduates were already gathering. The atmosphere was electric, a mixture of excitement, nostalgia, and anticipation for the future. During the rehearsal for the ceremony, Naomi spotted a familiar figure in the crowd of parents. Chase Hartman was standing by the gym wall, watching the proceedings. His daughter Kelly was Naomi's classmate. Chase worked at the local bank and was a respected member of the community. Married with 2 children and a house in a nice neighborhood, he was the epitome of stability in a small town. But something in his gaze made Naomi frown. He wasn't looking at his daughter, but somewhere toward the entrance, where the other parents were standing. The girl followed his gaze and saw Rachel, who had apparently arrived from work earlier than promised. There was a brief exchange of glances between Chase and Rachel, so quick that it could have been mistaken for a coincidence, but Naomi sensed something more, something intimate and hidden. After rehearsal, while the parents and students were leaving, Naomi approached Rachel. "I didn't know you were coming," she said. "I decided to finish early," Rachel replied, but there was a hint of tension in her voice. "I wanted to see how rehearsal was going." They drove home in relative silence. Naomi thought about the look she had seen between Rachel and Chase. Perhaps she was overinterpreting a chance glance, but her intuition told her otherwise. David was waiting for them at home with pizza and a good mood. "How was rehearsal, Princess?" Fine, Naomi replied, sitting down at the table. Mr. Johnson said the ceremony will be at 7 and the ball will start at 9. What about the corsage? David asked his wife. Rachel hesitated for a moment. The florist said it would be ready tomorrow. There was a problem with the flower delivery. Naomi looked at her stepmother more closely. Rachel was avoiding eye contact, which was unusual for her. She was usually open and straightforward. That evening, while her parents were watching TV in the living room, Naomi went up to her room on the pretext of preparing for tomorrow's lessons. Instead of her textbooks, she picked up the school yearbook and began flipping through photos of school events from recent years. In one of the photos, taken at last year's school fair, she saw Rachel and Chase standing next to one of the stalls. They were smiling at the camera, but there was a noticeable distance between them, as if they were trying not to appear too close. Naomi put down the yearbook and walked over to the window. Brighton looked peaceful and quiet at night. Streetlights illuminated the empty sidewalks of Whisper Lane, and only occasionally did a car pass by. This town had been her home her entire life, and she felt safe here. But now something had changed. She remembered a conversation with her mother shortly before she died. Her mother had said that the most important thing in life was honesty, especially with those you love. Lies destroy trust, Naomi, she had said, and without trust, there can be no real family. The girl looked at the photo on the bedside table. It was of her parents in happier times, when her mother was still alive. Then her gaze moved to a more recent photo of the three of them, with David and Rachel smiling at the camera during last year's Thanksgiving. Something told her that this idol could turn out to be as fragile as glass, and she was afraid that she would soon find out why. The next day, Naomi woke up with a feeling of unease that had not left her since the previous evening. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, but even the bright morning couldn't dispel the dark thoughts swirling in her head. When she went down to the kitchen, she found that Rachel had already left for work, leaving a note. Left early, urgent case at Dr. Miller's. Your breakfast is in the fridge. See you tonight. David was sitting at the table with a cup of coffee and a newspaper. Good morning, Princess. Rachel said they were busy at the clinic. Yes, she mentioned it, Naomi replied, taking a container of omelet out of the refrigerator. But something about the situation seemed suspicious to her. Rachel never left so early, even on her busiest days. Dad, she began cautiously, how long is Dr. Miller on vacation? David looked up from his newspaper. No idea. Why? Just wondering. Rachel said she has a lot of extra work because of it. I'm sure everything will work out soon, David said, returning to his reading. By the way, after school today, we'll go pick out some shoes for your prom. The ones we looked at last week are still in the store. Naomi nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. She decided that after school, she would stop by the clinic to see if Rachel was really working late. At school, the day passed as usual with preparations for prom. The teachers tried to get through their last lessons, but no one could concentrate. Even the most serious students could think of nothing but the upcoming celebration. During lunch, Jenny sat down next to Naomi with a tray full of food. You seem down today. What's wrong? Nothing much, Naomi lied. Just thinking about the future. Come on, I've known you forever. What's bothering you? Naomi hesitated. She didn't want to share her suspicions, which might turn out to be completely unfounded. Just family stuff. Rachel's been acting weird lately. Weird how? I don't know, secretive. Tense, like she's hiding something. Jenny frowned. Maybe she and your dad are having problems? I don't think so. Dad seems happy. It's something else. After school, Naomi didn't go home, but drove downtown to Dr. Miller's clinic. The small, two-story red brick building looked quiet and deserted. There were only 2 cars in the parking lot, and neither of them belonged to Rachel. Naomi went inside. An elderly woman was sitting in the reception area reading a magazine. There was no one at the front desk. Excuse me, Naomi said to the woman. Is Rachel Davis working today? The woman looked up from her magazine. Rachel? No, dear. She left about an hour ago. She said she wasn't feeling well. Naomi's heart began to race. Left at 1 o'clock? Are you sure? Of course. I've been waiting here for 3 hours for my appointment. Dr. Miller is running late. Isn't Dr. Miller on vacation? The woman looked surprised. On vacation? No, of course not. He's just stuck at the hospital with an emergency. He'll be back in an hour. Naomi thanked the woman and left the clinic feeling as if the ground had been pulled out from under her feet. Rachel had lied to them both that morning and the night before. She hadn't worked late. Dr. Miller wasn't on vacation, and she had left work early, lying about feeling ill. But where had she gone? And why lie? Naomi got into her car but didn't start the engine. She was trying to figure out what to do next when she saw a familiar figure across the street. Chase Hartman was leaving the bank and heading for his car. Naomi looked at her watch. 4 days. That was pretty early for a bank employee. Impulsively, she started the car and followed him, keeping a safe distance. Chase drove through the city center and turned onto Oakland Avenue, where there was a small shopping center. He parked near the Morning Dew Cafe, a quiet place usually frequented by middle-aged couples. Naomi parked at the other end of the lot and watched. A few minutes later, another car pulled up to the cafe. Rachel got out. The girl felt her heart sink. Rachel quickly walked to the cafe entrance, looking around. She clearly didn't want to be seen. Naomi sat in the car, not knowing what to do. Part of her wanted to drive away and forget what she had seen, but another part demanded to find out the truth. She waited until Rachel disappeared inside the cafe, then cautiously approached the window. Through the glass, she saw them sitting at a table in the far corner. Rachel was sitting across from Chase, their heads close together and their hands touching on the table. This was definitely not a casual conversation between acquaintances. Naomi stepped away from the window, feeling nauseous. Her stepmother was cheating on her father. All the pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. The lies about work, the strange behavior, the secret meetings. She returned to her car and drove home, not knowing what to do with this information. Should she tell her father? But what if she was wrong? What if there was an innocent explanation? At home, David was waiting for her with the car keys. "Ready to go get your shoes?" Naomi forced a smile. "Sure, Dad." "Sure." At the store, she mechanically tried on shoes, trying to focus on the conversation with her father, but her thoughts kept returning to what she had seen at the cafe. David was so happy talking about how proud he was of her and how much he was looking forward to her graduation. Naomi's heart ached at the thought that his world could be falling apart. "Dad," she said as they drove home, "are you happy with Rachel?" David looked at her in surprise. "Of course, Princess. Why do you ask?" "I'm just curious. Sometimes I feel like she's not as open as she used to be. You know, everyone goes through difficult periods. Rachel works a lot and gets tired, but I love her and she loves me. And most importantly, she loves you like her own daughter." Naomi nodded, but her father's words only intensified her inner struggle. That evening, when Rachel came home, Naomi watched her closely. Her stepmother looked tense but tried to appear normal. "How was work?" David asked at dinner. "Tough day," Rachel replied, not looking up from her plate. "Lots of patience." Naomi wanted to say something but held back. Instead, she asked, "When is Dr. Miller coming back from vacation?" Rachel froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. "Soon. Next week, I think." "That's strange," Naomi continued innocently. "I stopped by the clinic today and the nurse said he was just staying late at the hospital." The room fell silent. Rachel slowly put down her fork and looked at Naomi. Something that could have been fear flashed in her eyes. "Maybe the nurse was mistaken," she said finally. "Or she was talking about a different doctor." "Maybe," Naomi agreed, but she kept looking at her stepmother. The rest of the dinner was spent in awkward silence. David, unaware of the subtext of the conversation, tried to keep the conversation going about the upcoming prom, but his enthusiasm hung in the air. After dinner, Naomi went up to her room and lay down on her bed, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow was the last day of school before graduation, and the day after that was the ceremony itself. She should have been happy and excited, but instead she felt as if she were standing on the edge of a precipice. Around 11 o'clock, she heard Rachel's phone ring. The voices were muffled, but Naomi could hear the alarm in them. The conversation was short, but after it ended, Rachel paced around the house for a long time, and Naomi could hear her footsteps downstairs. She went to the window and looked out onto the street. Whisper Lane was empty, but in the light of the street lamp, she saw a car slowly drive past their house. The car stopped for a few seconds and then drove away. Naomi couldn't make out the license plate, but the silhouette of the driver looked familiar. She returned to bed, but sleep would not come. Thoughts swirled in her head, forming an increasingly grim picture. Rachel was definitely dating Chase Hartman, but how serious was their relationship? And what would happen if her father found out the truth? Naomi remembered her mother's words about the importance of honesty in a family. Mom was right. Lies really do destroy trust. But what do you do when the truth could destroy everything? Around midnight, she heard Rachel coming up the stairs. Her footsteps were slow and heavy. Naomi pretended to be asleep when her stepmother peeked into her room. "Naomi?" Rachel called softly. The girl didn't answer, and a minute later the door closed. But sleep didn't come. Naomi lay in the dark, knowing that tomorrow she would have to make a decision, to keep quiet or take action. Naomi woke up after a sleepless night with a heavy head and a heavy heart. It was the last day of school before graduation, but she felt no joy. One thought ran through her mind: what to do about what she had learned about Rachel and Chase. When she went down to the kitchen, she found her stepmother having breakfast. Rachel looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes, but she was trying to maintain her usual mask of a caring mother. "Good morning, dear. How did you sleep?" Rachel asked, without looking up from her cup of coffee. "Fine," Naomi lied, sitting down at the table. The atmosphere in the kitchen was tense, as if the air were charged with electricity before a storm. David walked in, buttoning his shirt. "The last day. Tomorrow my princess will be a graduate." He kissed Naomi on the forehead, then hugged Rachel around the shoulders. "My wife and I will be the proudest parents in the room." Naomi saw Rachel tense at her husband's touch. Her stepmother quickly freed herself from his embrace, saying she needed to pour him some coffee. "By the way," David said, "I'll stop by the florist after work today to pick up the corsage. Rachel, you said it would be ready, right?" Rachel froze with the coffee pot in her hands. "Yes, of course. It should be ready." Naomi watched this exchange with growing indignation. Even now, at a moment like this, Rachel continued to lie. The girl could no longer remain silent. "Dad, can I go with you to pick up the corsage? I want to make sure the flowers match the dress." "Of course, princess." Rachel glanced quickly at Naomi. A flash of alarm crossed her eyes. "Maybe I should go instead? I have an early break today." "No, Rachel," Naomi said firmly. "You work so much. You need to rest." After David left for work, a heavy silence hung in the kitchen. Rachel washed the dishes, avoiding her stepdaughter's gaze, while Naomi gathered her school supplies, wondering how to start the conversation. "Rachel," she finally said, "I need to talk to you." Her stepmother turned around, her eyes wary. "What is it, dear?" "I know you're seeing Chase Hartman." The plate slipped from Rachel's hands and shattered on the floor with a loud crash. The woman stood motionless, staring at the shards, as if not understanding what had happened. "I don't understand what you're talking about," she finally muttered. "I saw you yesterday at the Morning Dew Cafe, and I know you lied about your job. Dr. Miller isn't on vacation. You left work at 1 o'clock saying you weren't feeling well." Rachel slowly sank into a chair, her face as pale as chalk. "Naomi, how long has this been going on?" the girl asked, trying to keep her voice calm, even though she was boiling inside. Rachel was silent, staring at the floor. Finally, she looked up, and Naomi saw tears in her eyes. 6 months, she whispered. "It started by accident. We met at the bank when I was filling out paperwork for the clinic. We just started talking, and then you decided to betray Dad," Naomi finished coldly. "It's not as simple as it seems," Rachel exclaimed, her voice tinged with desperation. "You don't understand." "Then explain it to me. Explain how you can look into the eyes of someone who loves you and lie to him every day." Rachel stood up and began to pace nervously around the kitchen. "Your father is a good man. I really love him. But with Chase, it's different. He understands me. We talk about things I can't talk about with David." "Like what, for example?" Naomi asked sarcastically. "About dreams, about plans for the future. David is happy with his life here in Brighton. He wants everything to stay the same, but I want more. Chase offers me a different life." Naomi felt disgust. He's married, Rachel. He has a family. He's going to get a divorce, her stepmother blurted out. We plan to leave here once everything is settled. What about Dad? What about our family? Rachel paused and looked at Naomi with pleading eyes. Naomi, please try to understand. I didn't want this to happen, but sometimes the heart decides for us. Heart? Naomi stood up, her voice trembling with anger. You call that heart? You're destroying a family because of your selfishness. Don't judge me, Rachel snapped. You're too young to understand the complexities of adult relationships. I'm old enough to know the difference between right and wrong. Mom would never have done this. The mention of Naomi's late mother was the last straw. Rachel paled even more, and a cold gleam appeared in her eyes. Your mother is dead, Naomi. I'm here. I've been taking care of you and your father for 2 years. I have a right to be happy. Not at the expense of someone else's grief, Naomi shouted. I'll tell Dad. No! Rachel grabbed her arm. Please don't do this, not now, not before graduation. Naomi pulled her hand away. When? After you leave with Chase? Leave Dad alone to wonder what he did wrong? Give me time. I'll find a way to explain everything. How much time? Naomi demanded. Rachel hesitated. A week, 2 weeks. Please, Naomi, for your father's sake. If you tell him now, it will ruin your prom. You don't want that day to be ruined, do you? Naomi looked at her stepmother with a mixture of disgust and pity. Rachel was right about one thing. She didn't want her prom ruined, but keeping quiet seemed like a betrayal of her father. 1 week, she said finally. After prom, you have 1 week to tell your dad yourself. If you don't, I will. Rachel nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for Dad, so he'll at least have some good memories of my prom. Naomi picked up her backpack and headed for the door, but stopped in the doorway. And one more thing, Rachel. Until prom, you're going to act like a loving wife and mother. No meetings with Chase, no lies. If I find out you're still cheating on Dad, our deal is off. She left for school, leaving Rachel alone with a broken plate and shattered illusions. At school, Naomi found it difficult to concentrate. The last day of school was usually a fun, relaxed atmosphere, but she felt detached from the general excitement. You look like you've been hit by a truck, Jenny remarked during lunch. What's wrong? Family problems, Naomi replied curtly. Want to talk about it? Naomi shook her head. How could she explain to her friend that the world she knew was falling apart? During the last class, the principal, Mr. Anderson, came into the classroom with an announcement about tomorrow's ceremony. Naomi looked at him, but the words didn't register. She was thinking about her father, how proud he was of her, how he was planning tomorrow, and sitting next to him would be the woman who was preparing to break his heart. After school, Naomi met her father at the school. David was beaming with happiness. Well, princess, shall we go get your corsage? Then we'll stop by the house, pick up Rachel, and have a family dinner to celebrate your last day of school. On the way to the florist, David talked non-stop about tomorrow, about how he had taken the day off to be with her, about his plans for the summer. Every word he said touched Naomi's heart. Dad, she said when they stopped at a red light, what would you do if you found out that someone close to you was cheating on you? David looked at her in surprise. That's a strange question. Why do you ask? Just curious, hypothetically. He thought for a moment. I'd probably try to understand why they were doing it first. People usually lie out of fear or a desire to protect someone. But in the end, the truth is always more important. Without honesty, there can be no real relationship. The light turned green, and they drove on. Naomi swallowed the lump in her throat. Her father was right, as always. The truth really was more important than anything else. Disappointment awaited them at the florist's. The corsage wasn't ready. It turned out Rachel hadn't ordered it at all. I'm sorry, said the saleswoman, but I don't see an order for Davis. Are you sure you ordered it here? David looked confused. My wife said she ordered it. Maybe there was a mistake. Naomi felt another wave of anger rising. Even in such small things, Rachel continued to lie. It's okay, Dad. We can order rush delivery. The main thing is that the flowers are beautiful. The florist nodded. Of course, we can have a corsage ready by tomorrow morning. What flowers would you like? They chose white orchids with silver ribbon, and David paid for the rush order. On the way home, he looked puzzled. I don't understand how the order could have been mixed up. Maybe Rachel ordered from somewhere else, Naomi suggested, not wanting to make the situation worse. Rachel was waiting for them at home with a forced smile and a festive dinner. She had clearly made an effort to make everything look normal. She had set the table with her best dishes, cooked Naomi's favorite meal, and even bought a cake. "How's the corsage?" she asked when they sat down at the table. "Strange," David said. "The florist you gave me didn't have an order for it. I had to reorder." Rachel was taken aback for a moment. "Oh yes, I remembered I ordered it from somewhere else. I'm sorry, I completely forgot." Naomi gave her a cold look. Even now, after their conversation that morning, Rachel couldn't stop lying. Dinner was tense, with David trying to lighten the mood. He told funny stories from the auto shop, made plans for tomorrow's photo shoot, and dreamed of how proud he would be to see his daughter on stage. "You know what?" he said, raising his glass of juice. "Let's drink to our princess and to our family, to always being together no matter what happens." Rachel paled but raised her glass. Naomi forced herself to do the same. Her father's toast sounded like cruel irony. After dinner, when David went to the garage to do his work, Naomi stayed in the kitchen with Rachel. Her stepmother washed the dishes while the girl dried the plates. "Naomi," Rachel said quietly, "I want you to know that I really love your father. And you too." "Then stop it," Naomi replied without looking up. "Stop seeing Chase. Give our family a chance." Rachel shook her head. "It's too late. It's already decided. Chase is filing for divorce next week. We're planning to move out at the beginning of summer." "What about Dad? How will he feel?" "He'll get over it. David is a strong man, and in time, he'll find someone better than me." Naomi turned sharply toward her. "Better than him? Rachel, the problem isn't that you're not good enough. The problem is that you're selfish." "Maybe," Rachel agreed quietly, "but I can't change how I feel." At that moment, David walked into the kitchen. "What are you whispering about?" "About tomorrow," Rachel replied quickly. "Naomi's worried." David hugged his daughter. "Everything will be fine, Princess. Tomorrow will be the best day of your life." Naomi snuggled up to her father, feeling tears welling up in her eyes. If only he knew that tomorrow could be the beginning of the end for their family. Late that night, Naomi lay in bed, unable to sleep. She could hear her parents' muffled voices through the wall. David was telling Rachel something, his voice sounding quite relaxed. Rachel replied with short phrases. Around midnight, Naomi heard the sound of a message on Rachel's phone, then another. Her stepmother got out of bed and left the bedroom. Naomi quietly opened the door and saw Rachel coming downstairs with her phone in her hands. The girl waited a few minutes, then carefully went down the stairs. Rachel was standing in the kitchen with her phone pressed to her ear. She was whispering, but Naomi managed to make out a few phrases. "I can't wait any longer. She knows we need to speed things up." Naomi's heart began to race. Rachel was talking to Chase about her, about how their secret had been revealed. "After tomorrow night, yes, I understand the risks, but we have no choice." Naomi carefully climbed back up to her room, her mind racing. What did Rachel's words mean? What plans were they going to speed up? And what would happen after tomorrow night? She lay down in bed, but sleep would not come. Her intuition told her that something bad was going to happen tomorrow. Something that would change their lives forever. Naomi looked at her prom dress hanging on the closet door. Tomorrow was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. But now she feared it might be the last day of her family as she knew it. She closed her eyes and tried to imagine tomorrow night, the graduation ceremony, her parents' proud faces, the prom. But instead of happy images, dark forebodings filled her mind. Whatever Rachel and Chase were planning, Naomi was determined to protect her father, even if it meant ruining her own celebration. The morning of graduation day began with bright sunshine and birds chirping outside the window. Naomi woke up with a heavy heart, despite the importance of the day. She lay in bed for a long time, staring at her sea green graduation dress hanging on the closet door, a symbol of the end of one stage of her life and the beginning of another. When she went down to the kitchen, she found her parents already eating breakfast. David was beaming with pride and joy, while Rachel looked tense but tried to keep up the festive mood. "Good morning, graduate," David exclaimed, jumping up and hugging his daughter. "How did you sleep? Are you nervous?" "A little," Naomi admitted, sitting down at the table. She avoided looking at Rachel, who was bustling about at the stove. "I made your favorite breakfast," her stepmother said, placing a plate of pancakes in front of her. "You need to eat well before such an important day." Rachel tried to sound normal, but Naomi could hear the tension in her voice. Their conversation from the previous day hung between them like an unspoken weight. "What time does the ceremony start?" David asked, checking the time on his phone. 7 o'clock, and the ball starts at 9, Naomi replied, mechanically poking at the pancakes with her fork. "Rachel and I will be there right from the start. I've already set up the camera and checked the battery. I'll capture every second of your triumph." David was so happy that it broke Naomi's heart. She glanced at Rachel, who was standing with her back to them, and saw how tightly her shoulders were clenched. After breakfast, the day slipped away in pre-holiday bustle. Naomi met up with Jenny for last-minute preparations. They got their hair done at the salon and discussed plans for the evening. But the girls' thoughts kept returning to the family drama. "You seem distracted today," Jenny remarked as they left the salon. "Is it because school is ending?" "Something like that," Naomi replied, not wanting to go into details. When she returned home that afternoon, Naomi found the house in a state of festive chaos. David was rushing around with his camera, checking angles for filming, while Rachel cleaned with manic zeal. "Princess," her father called when he saw her. "Come here, let's take some pictures before the ceremony." The next hour was spent taking pictures. David photographed Naomi in her graduation dress, then her with Rachel, then family portraits. Her stepmother participated in the process, but Naomi could see that her smile didn't reach her eyes. Around 5 in the evening, Rachel approached Naomi, who was checking her appearance in the mirror one last time. "Naomi," she said quietly, "can I talk to you alone?" The girl turned to her stepmother. "About what?" "Please, it's important." They went into Naomi's bedroom and Rachel closed the door. Her face was pale and her hands were shaking. "Naomi, I want to ask you again. Please don't say anything to your father yet." "We already agreed. A week after graduation." "No, I mean longer. Give me more time." Naomi spun around. "How much more time?" "A month, 2 months. I need to get everything organized." "Organize what? Your escape with Chase?" Rachel lowered her eyes. "It's more complicated than you think. He has children, a house, a business. We can't just up and leave." "What about Dad? What about his life, his feelings?" "Naomi, please." Rachel's voice took on a pleading tone. "I understand that you're angry, but think about the consequences. If you tell your father now, it will destroy not only our marriage, but also Chase's reputation and his family." "What do I care about Chase's reputation?" Naomi snapped. "He's a grown man. He knew what he was getting into. But his children are innocent." Naomi looked at her stepmother with disgust. How convenient to bring up the children when you need to justify your actions. Where was that concern when you started your affair? Rachel sat down on the edge of the bed, covering her face with her hands. "You don't understand what it's like to feel trapped. Your father is a good man, but he never understood my ambitions, my dreams." "Then talk to him, explain, but don't betray him." "It's too late for talking," Rachel whispered. "Everything has already been decided." There was something final in her tone that made Naomi wary. "What do you mean?" Rachel raised her head, and Naomi saw a strange determination in her eyes. "After tonight, everything will change. I want you to know that and be ready." "Ready for what?" "For our family not being the same anymore." Before Naomi could ask any more questions, David knocked on the door. "Girls, it's time to go. I don't want us to be late." The graduation ceremony took place in a solemn atmosphere. The school auditorium was filled with proud parents, teachers, and graduates. Naomi sat in the front row with her classmates, glancing periodically at the stands where David and Rachel were sitting. Her father beamed with pride, filming every moment of the ceremony. Rachel sat next to him, but Naomi noticed that her stepmother was frequently looking at her phone and seemed anxious. When the school principal called Naomi's name to receive her diploma, she walked up to the stage to applause. At that moment, she saw Chase Hartman standing in the aisle, applauding along with everyone else. Their eyes met for a moment, and Naomi felt a chill run down her spine. There was something disturbing in his eyes. After the ceremony, preparations for the prom began. The graduates went home to change into their evening attire, while their parents helped decorate the gym. At home, Naomi quickly changed into her prom dress, an elegant blue gown that she and her father had chosen several weeks earlier. David kept taking pictures, while Rachel helped with the finishing touches on her makeup. "You look like a princess," her father said when Naomi came down the stairs. "Your mother would have been so proud." Naomi hugged her father, feeling tears welling up in her eyes. "I love you, Dad. And I love you, Princess, more than anything in the world." Rachel stood to one side, watching the scene. There was a strange expression on her face, a mixture of sadness and determination. The prom was held in the decorated school gym. The walls were draped in white fabric with twinkling lights, creating a magical atmosphere. Live music played, couples danced, and parents took pictures with their children. Naomi danced the traditional father-daughter dance with her father, trying to remember every moment. David was happy, whispering in her ear how proud he was of her and how much he loved her. "No matter what happens in life," he said, "remember that you will always be my princess." After the dance, Naomi saw Rachel talking to someone on the phone in the corner of the hall. Her stepmother looked agitated, her gestures sharp and nervous. Around 10 o'clock, Rachel approached Naomi, who was standing at the refreshment table. "Naomi, I need to talk to you, right now." "About what?" "Come outside with me, please." Something in Rachel's tone made Naomi agree. They left the gym and stepped out into the schoolyard. The night was warm, but Naomi felt a chill. "What's wrong?" she asked. Rachel looked around nervously, making sure they were alone. "Naomi, I want you to know that no matter what happens, I really care about you." "What do you mean?" "The plans have changed. Chase and I need to move faster than we planned." Naomi's heart began to race. "What do you mean faster?" "Tonight. We're leaving tonight." "What?" Naomi couldn't believe her ears. "You're going to abandon Dad on my graduation day?" "We don't have a choice. Chase's wife is getting suspicious. If we don't leave now, it might be too late." "What about Dad? He'll wake up tomorrow and you won't be there?" Rachel lowered her eyes. "I'll leave a note. I'll explain everything." Naomi felt anger boiling up inside her with renewed force. "A note? You think a note will make up for years of lies?" "Naomi, please try to understand." "No!" the girl interrupted her. "I won't let you do this to Dad. You can't stop me." "I can. I'm going to go tell him everything right now." Rachel grabbed her arm. "No, not now. Not on a day like this. It'll ruin your prom." "My prom is already ruined," Naomi shouted, pulling away. "You ruined everything." She turned to go back into the hall, but Rachel stopped her again. "Naomi, wait. I didn't want it to turn out like this." "How did you think it would? Did you think you could lie to us forever?" "I thought I'd have more time to explain." "Time's up, Rachel. Right now." Naomi tried to leave again, but this time Rachel grabbed her by the shoulders and spun her around to face her. "You don't understand!" Her stepmother's voice was desperate. "If you tell your father now, it will destroy more than just our family. Chase will lose his job, his children, his home. His wife will file for divorce and take everything." "So what? Because if he loses everything, he might do something terrible. He already said he'd rather die than lose me." Naomi looked at her stepmother with disgust. "Are you trying to blackmail me?" "I'm trying to explain that it's not just our lives at stake." "I don't care. Dad has a right to know the truth." Rachel stood between Naomi and the school entrance, blocking her way. In the light of the street lamp, her face looked distorted, almost unrecognizable. "I can't let you ruin our plans," she said quietly. "What do you mean?" Instead of answering, Rachel took something shiny out of her purse. Naomi realized with horror that it was a knife, a small but sharp paper knife that Rachel used at work at the clinic. "Rachel, what are you doing?" "What I have to do." "I'm sorry, Naomi." It all happened very quickly. Rachel stepped forward. Naomi tried to back away but tripped on the step. They struggled for a few seconds. But Rachel was stronger and more determined. Naomi felt a sharp pain in her chest, then another. She looked down and saw blood on her blue dress. "Why?" she whispered as she fell to her knees. Rachel stood over her with a bloody knife in her hand, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Because I had no choice. I'm sorry." Naomi tried to call for help, but only a rasp came out of her throat. Her strength was leaving her, her vision blurring. The last thing she saw was Rachel putting the knife in her purse and hurrying toward the parking lot. 20 minutes later, Jenny Wilson left the gym to get some fresh air. She saw a dark figure on the ground near the entrance, and at first thought someone had fallen. "Naomi?" she called, approaching. Then she saw the blood and screamed. Her scream attracted the attention of others. Within seconds, teachers, parents, and students rushed to the scene. Someone called an ambulance and the police. David Davis pushed his way through the crowd and fell to his knees next to his daughter. "Naomi! Princess! Naomi!" But it was too late. Naomi Davis, who just a few hours ago had received her diploma with a smile on her face, now lay motionless in her prom dress, stained with blood. Someone in the crowd asked, "Where's Rachel? Where's Mrs. Davis?" David raised his head, his face wet with tears. "She was here. They left together." The first police officers arrived 10 minutes later. Detective Priscilla Thompson was the officer on duty and one of the first to arrive at the scene. She quickly assessed the situation and began giving orders. "Clear everyone away from the crime scene. Don't let anyone leave until we've interviewed everyone present. And find Rachel Davis, the victim's stepmother." The search for Rachel was unsuccessful. Her car was gone from the parking lot, and her phone was not answering. There was no one at her house either. Detective Thompson was examining the crime scene when one of the officers approached her. "Detective, we can't find Mrs. Davis anywhere. And there's something else. Chase Hartman is missing too. His wife says he left the house in the evening and hasn't returned." Priscilla frowned. 2 disappearances in one night couldn't be a coincidence. "Put out a search for them, and check all the surveillance cameras in the area. I want to know where they went." Meanwhile, David Davis sat in the ambulance, unable to believe what was happening. His daughter was dead, his wife was missing. The world he knew had collapsed in one night. Detective Thompson approached him with a notepad in her hands. "Mr. Davis, I understand this is difficult, but I need to ask you a few questions." David looked up at her, with eyes red from crying. "Find whoever did this. Find them and punish them." "We'll do everything we can, sir. Did your wife have any enemies? Anyone who might have threatened your family?" "Rachel? No. She was loved by everyone. She was caring and kind." He paused, his voice breaking. "Where is she? Why isn't she answering her phone?" Detective Thompson exchanged glances with her colleague. She didn't want to tell the victim's father about her suspicions yet. "We're working on it, sir. Now tell me about tonight. When was the last time you saw Naomi alive?" The investigation had only just begun, but Detective Thompson already knew that this case would not be easy. There were too many coincidences, too many unanswered questions. The prom at Brighton High ended in tragedy, shaking the entire town to its core. The next 48 hours would be the most intense of Detective Priscilla Thompson's career. The murder of an 18-year-old girl on prom night shook Brighton to its core, and the disappearance of the victim's stepmother and another town resident turned the tragedy into a real mystery. Priscilla sat in her office at the police station, studying the case files. On the board in front of her were photos from the crime scene, witness statements, and a timeline of the evening's events. There was a knock at the door, and Sergeant Michael Rodriguez entered with new documents. "Detective, we got the CCTV footage and Rachel Davis's bank records." Priscilla took the folder and quickly scanned its contents. "What do we have?" A gas station camera on the way out of town caught Rachel's car at 11:47 p.m. She was heading toward the interstate. No passengers are visible, but judging by the silhouette, a woman was driving. And Chase Hartman? His car left town at about the same time, but took a different route. A camera at the bank caught his car at 11:52. He was also heading toward the freeway. Priscilla frowned. So they left separately, but at almost the same time. This was planned in advance. It looks like it, but the bank records are even more interesting. Rodriguez opened another folder. Over the last 3 months, Rachel withdrew nearly $15,000 from her personal account. Small amounts, so as not to attract attention. She was preparing to escape, the detective muttered. What about the phone records? Here's the most interesting part. In recent weeks, she has been actively corresponding with Chase Hartman. The last messages were sent on the night of the murder. Priscilla took the printout of the correspondence and began to read. The messages were cautious, but to an experienced investigator, their meaning was obvious. The plans have changed. We need to act today, she read aloud. This is from Chase, sent at 9:15 p.m. And Rachel's reply at 9:23. I understand. But what about the problem? The problem, Priscilla repeated. I think we know who they were referring to. Rodriguez nodded grimly. Naomi knew about their connection. She may have threatened to tell him everything. We need to talk to the girl's father. She may have said something to him. David Davis looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 2 days. He sat in the living room of his home on Whisper Lane, staring at a single point. The house, which had recently been filled with laughter and plans for the future, now seemed like a mausoleum. Priscilla sat down carefully across from him. Mr. Davis, I understand how difficult this is for you, but we need to talk about Rachel and Naomi. David slowly raised his eyes. Have you found her? Have you found my wife? Not yet, sir, but we have reason to believe she left town voluntarily. That's impossible. David shook his head. Rachel would never leave us. Something happened. Maybe the same person who killed Naomi kidnapped her too. The detective took photos from a folder. Mr. Davis, these are photos from a gas station. Your wife is driving her car out of town 2 hours after Naomi was murdered. David took the photo with trembling hands. In the blurry black and white image, Rachel could indeed be seen driving her Honda Civic. No, he whispered. No, this can't be true. Mr. Davis, be honest with me. Have you noticed anything strange about your wife's behavior lately? David was silent for a long time, his face reflecting his inner struggle. Finally, he spoke. She's been tense the last few weeks. She was on the phone a lot, leaving the house under various pretexts. I thought she was tired from work. And Naomi? Did she say anything about Rachel? She asked if I was happy in my marriage. David's voice grew even quieter. The day before graduation, I didn't think anything of it, thought she was just nervous about the upcoming changes. Priscilla carefully took out another folder. Mr. Davis, we need to talk about Chase Hartman. Did you know him well? Chase? Of course. He works at the bank where we do our banking. A good man, a model family man. Why? He also disappeared on the night of the murder. His wife reported that he left the house and never returned. David stared at the detective, slowly realizing the meaning of what he was saying. You think that Rachel and Chase... We have evidence of their secret meetings, Mr. Davis. Phone records, witness statements. They've been seeing each other for several months. David's world collapsed completely. He covered his face with his hands and cried, not quietly like men mourn, but sobbing like a child. Naomi knew, he said through his tears. That's why she asked me if I was happy. She was trying to warn me. Priscilla gave him a few minutes to compose himself. Mr. Davis, I need to know. Did Naomi say anything specific about Rachel in the last few days? David wiped his eyes and tried to focus. On graduation morning, she was kind of distant. There was tension between them at breakfast. I could feel it, but I didn't understand why. And then Rachel went out to talk to her before the prom. Did you hear what they were talking about? No, they locked themselves in Naomi's room, but when they came out, they both looked upset. The detective wrote this down in her notebook. The picture was becoming clearer, but she needed physical evidence. Meanwhile, in another part of town, forensic experts were finishing their examination of Rachel and David's house. In the couple's bedroom, they found a suitcase hidden behind a dresser containing women's clothing and documents. Detective Thompson, her team leader called her, we found something interesting. Rachel was clearly preparing to leave. The suitcase contains documents, money, even a new passport under a different name. A passport under a different name? Yes, in the name of Rachel Miller. It's a high-quality forgery, but still a forgery. Priscilla felt adrenaline rush through her veins. So the escape was planned in advance and thoroughly. What else? We found traces of blood on a towel in the bathroom. We sent it for analysis, but it looks like someone tried to wash the blood off their hands or clothes. And the murder weapon? Not yet, but Rachel's stationery set is missing a paper knife. Colleagues at the clinic confirmed that she always carried one in her purse. Priscilla closed her eyes and tried to imagine the sequence of events. Rachel and Chase had planned to run away. Naomi found out about their relationship and threatened to tell everyone. On prom night, they had to speed up their plans, and Naomi became an obstacle that had to be eliminated. That evening, the results of the forensic examination came in. The blood on the towel belonged to Naomi Davis. Rachel's fingerprints were on the door handle leading from the school to the backyard, where the body was found. But the most important piece of evidence came the next day. A cell phone camera belonging to one of the graduates accidentally captured the moment when Rachel and Naomi left the gym. The time on the recording was 10:17 p.m. The body was discovered at 10:43 p.m., enough time to commit murder and attempt to cover up the evidence. Priscilla called a press conference and announced Rachel Davis as the prime suspect in the murder of her stepdaughter. Arrest warrants were issued for both her and Chase Hartman as an accomplice. The search continued for another week. The FBI joined the investigation as the suspects crossed state lines. Bank records showed that Rachel had withdrawn money from ATMs in 3 different states as she traveled west. The end came unexpectedly. Rachel and Chase were arrested at a motel in Nevada. The local sheriff recognized them from federal wanted photos. They did not resist arrest. A paper knife wrapped in a towel was found in the trunk of Chase's car during a search of the motel. There were still traces of blood on the blade. Rachel's interrogation took place in the Brighton courthouse. The woman who, just a week ago, had played the role of a caring stepmother, now sat in an orange prison jumpsuit with her head bowed. "Rachel," Priscilla began calmly, "we know what happened. We have evidence, the murder weapon with your fingerprints on it, the victim's blood in your home, video recordings. Tell us your version of events." Rachel remained silent for a long time. Finally, she raised her eyes, red and swollen from crying. "I didn't want to kill her," she whispered. "I loved Naomi." "Then why?" "She threatened to tell my father everything, at the worst possible moment. Chase and I were planning to leave, to start a new life. But his wife was starting to suspect something. We had to act immediately." "And you decided that murder would solve the problem?" Rachel shook her head. "I tried to talk her out of it. I asked her to wait, but she was so stubborn, so principled, just like her mother. Tell me what happened at the school." Rachel took a deep breath. "I tried to explain the situation to her. I told her we were leaving that night. She got angry and said she would tell David everything right away. I don't know what came over me. I had a knife in my purse and I took it out to scare her, but she tried to run away. We struggled and you stabbed her twice in the chest." "I didn't mean to. It just happened." Priscilla looked at this woman who had killed an innocent girl for her own selfish happiness and felt disgust. "Rachel Davis, you are under arrest for the first-degree murder of Naomi Davis. You have the right to..." The trial of Rachel and Chase took place 6 months later. The case attracted national attention. The story of a stepmother who killed her stepdaughter because of a love affair shocked the public. David Davis attended every hearing. He had aged and turned gray, but he held himself with dignity. In his testimony, he spoke of the happy family that had been destroyed by lies and betrayal. "Naomi was the light of my life," he said, addressing the jury. "A smart, kind, honest girl. She deserved a long and happy life, not death at the hands of someone she trusted." Chase Hartman received 15 years as an accomplice and for helping to cover up the crime. Rachel was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. After the verdict was handed down, David approached Detective Thompson. "Thank you," he said simply, "for finding the truth. It's my job, Mr. Davis. I'm just sorry we couldn't prevent the tragedy." Naomi would have been glad that justice prevailed. She always believed in the truth. A year has passed since that tragic prom night. A memorial plaque has been erected at Brighton High in honor of Naomi Davis. Every year on graduation day, flowers are brought to her. David sold the house on Whisper Lane and moved to another state. He couldn't live in a place where every corner reminded him of his lost daughter and devoted wife. Detective Priscilla Thompson was promoted and continued to work on difficult cases. But the case of Naomi Davis remained in her memory forever, a reminder that the most terrible crimes are often committed by those we trust the most. Rachel is serving a life sentence in a state prison for women. She never received forgiveness from David, whom she asked for in letters from prison. Some wounds never heal. The Davis family's story became a warning to all of Brighton. Beneath a facade of prosperity, lies can destroy lives, and the price of secrets is sometimes deadly. Naomi Davis never made it to college, never married, never had children. Her life was cut short at the age of 18 because of the selfishness of adults who put their own desires above human life.